The new Resident Evil 2 game will feature an over-the-shoulder camera with precision aiming, and this video is an attempt to console the true Resident Evil 2 fans who are struggling to come to terms with this news. The main concern with the new Resident Evil 2 was the removal or the non-inclusion of the fixed camera, but almost no one mentioned that the game didn't have tank controls. In this video I will talk about both of these things, how they're connected, and why they don't make sense to have one without the other, so Capcom removed both. Ever since the Resident Evil 1 remake, fans have asked one question: I wonder what Resident Evil 2 would look like in the style of the Resident Evil 1 remake. That is all the fans have ever wanted, and they're annoyed that they're not going to get that style of remake, but also getting a so-called remake that doesn't play like the original game is like putting salt on the wound. This would be like if you asked your mum for a PlayStation and what you got was a PlayStation. Put it like this: imagine a remake of Half-Life 2 was announced and it went from a first-person shooter to a third-person shooter. It's a small change in camera angle that changes everything. It wouldn't make any sense. Or imagine a remake for Final Fantasy VII came out without a fixed camera, and instead of turn-based gameplay, it was an action... oh wait, never mind. I've been very vocal in my criticism of Capcom moving away from survival horror in favour of action gameplay to attract a larger audience. I've also said in previous videos how I thought an over-the-shoulder or first-person camera angle couldn't work as a survival horror unless other gameplay changes were made. After all, 99% of over-the-shoulder games are action games. See if you can name 3 over-the-shoulder survival horror games. That's right, you can't. By the way, Dead Space is an action horror, not a survival horror, and contrary to Wikipedia, Resident Evil 4 is an action game. There aren't even many horror elements in Resident Evil 4, and don't get me started on Evil Within. The only over-the-shoulder survival horror I can think of is Cold Fear. So there you go, have a free one on me and see if you can name 2 more. Even though I've always been against an over-the-shoulder camera being added to Resident Evil 2, it may be a surprise to learn that not only am I not disappointed by the announcement of the new over-the-shoulder RE2 game, but I'm actually looking forward to it. My main concern with this camera change is that the game would be something like Operation Raccoon City, pure action. Capcom have addressed my concerns at E3 by showing a demo full of survival horror elements. It's easy to think that Capcom took the easy option here and were appealing to the Resident Evil 4 fans, but they really aren't. Capcom took a big risk going to E3 with the RE2 demo. What some people might not realise is that Capcom aren't appealing to the RE4 fans because the new game they exhibited is not an action game. They aren't appealing to the Resident Evil 2 fans either because it doesn't have fixed camera angles or tank controls. They are appealing to survival horror fans. They know that they have 2 very different fan bases, and instead of trying to keep one or the other happy, they've created something unique in the hope that both fan bases will come together and enjoy this new game. The over-the-shoulder camera in the new RE2 wasn't a surprise to me anyway. I seen this coming, and I'm not just talking about the rumours. I had a different insight. I was at a friend's house when it happened. He asked if he should buy Resident Evil 7, and I said that the Resident Evil Origins collection's much better, plus you get 2 games for the price of 1. Not convinced, I told him I would bring over my copy to his house and show him true survival horror. As I was playing, he thought it looked cool, and before I gave him the controller so he could try it out, I explained to him that I don't use the new control type to play, I use tank controls. Tank controls? He asked. He looked at me like I had 2 heads. Why would you use such an awkward control type? I tried to explain to him that with fixed camera angles, the camera constantly changes direction, which makes pushing the analog stick in the direction you want to move problematic because that direction constantly changes with every camera angle change. Tank controls solve this problem. You always move in the direction your character is facing instead of the direction you push the analog stick. Tank controls don't make any sense in any other context, except when you're driving an actual tank, but in early pre-rendered games they were designed with the problem of the camera constantly changing in mind. They really are the best solution to that problem. I also point out that I'm not a fan of the alternative default controls Capcom added to the remakes. It's fine that they added them if they get more people to play the remakes, I just don't use them for 3 reasons. 1. They look silly and unnatural. You can spin on a dime and it doesn't look right or feel right in the context of a horror game. During normal gameplay it doesn't look right, but here's an exaggerated example of me running up and down the stairs. I'm obviously purposely pushing up and down as quick as I can here, but this type of thing happens by accident while playing with these controls, and aesthetically it just doesn't look right. And it spoils any type of atmosphere the game might have. Now, as you can see, in game you can very quickly change your controls if you want to, which is great. You have the option of alternative or original controls. The original controls being the tank controls. I really like how you can change this in game. It's not a decision you have to make at the start of the game. And I just think in general with the tank controls, the movement is slowed down a lot better, and walking up and down these stairs just looks and feels so much more natural. Reason number 2, the game is so much easier with the new alternative controls. It's almost comical how easy it is to dodge the zombies. A big part of the early Resident Evil games, and indeed most survival horror games, is dodging or avoiding enemies. This takes all the skill and horror out of dodging or avoiding the enemies. Yes, with tank controls you can do a 180 spin to run away from the zombies, but it takes about a second, which is enough time to get grabbed. With the new controls you can instantly do a 180 spin, making it very hard for the zombies to get a hold of you. Number 3, the worst issue with the new controls is with the camera changing constantly, you have to constantly readjust the direction you point your analog stick in. This is very hard to explain if you've never played the Origins collection, so I've set up a demonstration. Take one of the first corridors in the game for example. In one camera angle, pushing up will take you right, while pushing down will take you left. But in the next camera angle, the opposite is true. Pushing up on your analog stick takes you left, and pushing down takes you right. If you hold the analog stick in, it's fine, but the minute you let go of the analog stick, your directions get reconfigured. In my example, I'm showing how using the same direction of the analog in the same corridor, you can pretty much get stuck in an infinite loop. Of course this is exaggerated, I'm doing a demonstration here, but you can imagine how this type of thing catches you out all the time while playing with these controls. I also explained to my friend that a byproduct of tank controls is slightly slower movement and slightly less control. Bear in mind, loss of control is crucial to a horror game. The less you control, the scarier the situation is liable to be, making tank controls the perfect type for a survival horror game. After my lengthy explanation about the controls, my friend was frustrated by the whole thing and showed no interest in continuing to play, and instead said, "Let's play some Fortnite." So we did. After that night I could clearly see the dilemma Capcom were facing. It hit me like a diamond bullet. What I now call the fixed camera control dilemma. Capcom know people have a problem with tank controls, and I'm willing to bet they also know fixed camera views only work with tank controls. So by getting rid of the fixed camera in favour of the over-the-shoulder camera, they're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. People are more comfortable now with the over-the-shoulder controls. They're used to them now with all the third-person shooters out there, and it feels more familiar to them. Also, put yourself in Capcom's shoes. Can you imagine spending years working on a game only for a reviewer to play it for a few minutes and complain the controls aren't good? The fact is, websites like IGN will complain about the smallest thing in a game, and they'll review a survival horror as if it's an action game. All it takes is a few bad reviews and it's going to badly affect your sales. So in many ways I have sympathy for Capcom on this issue. But where does that leave us now? It's not going to be the game I wanted. It's not going to be the game I expected, but I'm now looking forward to it for different reasons. We may never get the Resident Evil 1 style remake we always wanted, and partially seen in Resident Evil 0. But then lots of my favourite games will never get remade the way I want them to. This is a missed opportunity, but as a consolation, at least we're finally getting a new survival horror game from Capcom. This new game could be groundbreaking. Evil Within tried to do survival horror with an over-the-shoulder camera and failed. Shinji Mikami, of all people, failed to do what Capcom might do with this new Resident Evil game, and that's one of the most important things to happen to survival horror for years. This could be the revival that finally kickstarts a genre that has been non-existent for years, which is why I plan to get this game on day one, and I hope to make some videos about it when it comes out. I would love to know your thoughts on this so-called remake. Thanks for watching this video. A huge thank you to everyone who has continued to support me on Patreon. I know I haven't been uploading as much lately, so sticking with me has been really kind. I have the best Patreons and I just want to say thank you for everything. One more thing before I go. The trailer did have some small sections where it showed what looks like fixed cam reviews, so don't be surprised if the final game has small sections with a fixed cam review as a reference to the original game. I can't see these parts having any combat if they do in fact exist in the finished game. They probably are only there just to sort of build atmosphere, but I can't see why else they would be in the trailer, so I'm interested to see if that makes it into the final game. But we'll just have to wait to find out. Please don't forget to subscribe, and you could always check out some of my other Resident Evil 2 videos.